Alcohol, death, in a drink. My name is Joshua Owen. I'll be going through this narration. This is for course Justice 215, Drugs and Society at Northern Arizona University. The stats on alcohol. In 2014, 87.6% of people aged 18 or older said they had drank an alcoholic drink at some time in their lifetime. 71% said that they had had an alcoholic beverage in the past year, and 56.9% said they had had a drink in the last month. These are relatively high and alarming statistics, especially with almost 57% saying that they'd had a drink in the last month, and also almost 88% of people age 18 or older said they had had a drink in some lifetime. I think what's alarming about that is it's age 18 and older, which you have those 3 years where drinking is considered underage and illegal. Along with that, nearly 88,000 people die each year from alcohol-related deaths, which is the fourth leading preventable cause of death in the United States. Amazing, once again, that the number is that high, so high that it would be fourth in preventable causes of death. And in 2014, 9,967 deaths were related to alcohol-impaired drivers. That's 31% of all driving deaths in the United States in 2014. That number is absolutely ridiculous, as you can see, as it is more than 10% of the number of alcohol-related deaths from the previous stat. So now we talk about alcohol in the brain, how it affects the brain. Alcohol does damage the brain. Studies have shown that there are short-term effects and long-term effects. The short-term effects include difficulty walking, blurred vision, blurred speech, slowed reaction time, and impaired memory. These short-term effects, of course, would be more visible with somebody who has had too much to drink in that night, would most certainly probably have a blood alcohol level that is too high to operate a motor vehicle. Some of the long-term effects include blackouts, memory loss. A survey in a survey, college students, 51% reported blacking out at some point in their lives, while 40% said they had a blackout the year before the survey, and 9.4% blacked out 2 weeks prior to the survey. I think that goes along with what we covered earlier in the course with binge drinking. The fact that almost 10% blacked out 2 weeks prior to the survey displays how serious alcohol abuse is becoming in the United States. Other things that can have long-term effect include brain damage, particularly, I hope I'm saying this correctly, thiamine deficiency, which is loss of vitamin B1. Loss of vitamin B1 is vital to the body tissue, which includes brain tissue, and 80% of all alcoholics develop this deficiency. The last one, once again, I hope I'm pronouncing this correctly, is Wernicke-Korsakoff syndrome. This is a disease that causes mental confusion and nerve paralysis in the eyes. So some very serious long-term effects that go along with the use of alcohol and how it affects the brain. So now we're going to talk about the physiological effects of alcohol. Obviously, one of the most common being liver disease as a long-term effect. Causes sleep pattern change, mood change, and personality changes, and in serious cases can cause a coma. Your liver is obviously a vital organ to your body. So developing this due to large amounts of alcohol consumption definitely is a danger to oneself. In women who are pregnant, consuming alcohol can cause the child to develop fetal alcohol syndrome. This is becoming way too common. Some signs include small head circumference, small eye opening, thin upper lip, short nose, and low nasal bridge. Also, babies born with FAS are usually smaller in size. Their brains have less volume. The brain cylinder shortage is also common in babies with FAS. Most of this, I would imagine, is due to not having clean blood get to the brain. It's almost, in a way, you're drowning your child before they're even developed, in a sort of sense. And then finally, sex hormones and maturation have shown to slow in adolescent boys and girls due to alcohol consumption. I believe this would go back to fetal alcohol syndrome. Essentially, it's just dangerous to consume any form of alcohol while pregnant, and it certainly isn't fair to your child. So next, let's talk about blood alcohol concentration, or BAC, also referred to as blood alcohol levels. Blood alcohol concentration is the number of grams of alcohol in the blood relative to 100 milliliters of blood, expressed as a percentage. Of course, the legal limit of blood alcohol concentration level in an individual in the United States is 0.08%. Once you reach 0.08%, you are declared impaired to drive. While numbers between 0.01 to 0.07 are not considered drunk, they are to be taken seriously, and upon reaching 0.05 or higher, an individual is considered to be impaired. That's where you would have the difference between DUI and DWI, as DUI would be anything 0.8 or higher, and then DWI, I believe here in Oklahoma, is 0.05 or higher. In individuals under 21, DWI in Oklahoma is considered to be 0.02, which I'm not sure. I imagine it would be very similar in Arizona. BAC levels are specific to an individual's body weight and number of drinks consumed. This does affect men and women. Women tend to try to keep up with their male counterparts in drinking, and it's just scientifically and it's just not possible due to body size. The BAC effects of alcohol. This is just a chart that was put out by the National Commission Against Drunk Driving, the American Medical Association, and the National Institute on Alcohol Abuse and Alcoholism. And as you can see, it lists the typical effects and predictable effects on driving. 0.02, some loss of judgment, relaxation, slight body warmth, altered mood. At that point, you decline in visual function, decline in ability to perform two tasks at the same time. Once you get up to 0.05, your behavior begins to exaggerate, may have loss of small muscle control, impaired judgment, usually good feeling, lowered alertness, and release of inhibition. I can't get that out. Reduced coordination, reduced ability to track moving objects, difficulty steering, and reduced response to emergency driving situations. That's how that would affect your driving. Point 8, when you are considered to be impaired, muscle coordination becomes poor, vision, reaction time, hearing, balance, speech are affected, hard to detect danger, judgment, self-control, and memory are impaired. Concentration, short-term memory loss, speed control, reduced. Reduced impaired process capability, signal detection, visual search, impaired perception. That's how that would affect driving. However, I think what we need to understand here is that not only does this affect driving, but when we talk about muscle coordination, reaction time, judgment, self-control, I mean, those things can be related to other things, such as use of firearms, being around water. I know here in Oklahoma there's been a rise in alcohol-related deaths while on a boat on the lake. So when you get up to 0.08, you really start to lose a lot of control, a lot of judgment, sensitivity. And then, of course, 0.10, 0.15, you really get up there, slurred speech, poor coordination, less muscle control, vomiting usually occurs right around double the legal limit. So how to tell when you've had too much? Law enforcement agencies have multiple ways that they utilize to tell how much alcohol is in a person's system. Some of these include a breath test, a chemical test, a blood test. Some states like Oklahoma, we still use the breath test. It's been a common method. It's one of 3 subtests that are performed that begin with an SFST, a standard field sobriety test. When I moved to Arizona and began work for a sheriff's department there, it became clear to me that Arizona actually had officers who were certified phlebotomists who could draw blood to get a better blood alcohol level. And when I asked an officer why Arizona does that, he explained to me that with blood, it's a lot easier to get a DUI conviction than with a breath. It's more reliable, which makes total sense. That blood would be more reliable than a breath test. These tests can be the decider on whether someone goes to jail or not when they've been drinking. So really it goes back to judgment on whether you should be driving or not. So how does alcohol affect the mood? In 1991, a study in Ontario, Canada, proved that more than 50% of recent violent acts were directly due to alcohol use. Studies have also showed that 50% to 60% of murders committed, alcohol was involved. 40% of male aggression against women involved alcohol, while 60 to 7% of domestic violence involved alcohol, most of those being male aggressors. And also 60% of child molestation involved alcohol. So it goes back to the chart that we were showing. When your blood alcohol level gets up to 0.08 or more, you lose lots of judgment. And it's not only on the side of the aggressor or the person who commits the violent act or crime. It comes back to the victim as well. When we talk about male aggression against women, certainly alcohol being involved with both parties, in many cases, I would imagine, is involved. So now, college crime and alcohol. So a study showed that 1,825 vehicle accidents were related to alcohol with college students. 696,000 students were assaulted by students under the influence of alcohol, which is quite alarming. and 97,000 students reported sexual assault or date rape due to alcohol consumption. This goes back to the previous that I mentioned. When alcohol is involved with both parties, things like sexual assault or date rape are definitely possibilities, and certainly those chances go up with alcohol consumption. And about 1 in 4 college students report academic consequences from drinking, including missing class, falling behind in class, doing poorly on exams or papers, and receiving lower grades overall. This is simply common sense. If you're not out drinking and getting drunk, you don't have hangovers the next day, and you don't miss class, you don't fall behind or do poorly on exams. So let's talk about treatment and prevention. The Oklahoma Highway Safety Office in Oklahoma City came up with a website to help those who need advice about drinking and to help with treatment. Parent-child communication is key to preventing underage drinking and worse, alcohol-related deaths. Sites like alcoholscreening.org I found to be very interesting because they perform an online screening. It just asks you a few questions, how many drinks you have in a month, week, day, and it looks into an individual's drinking habits. In that screening, it would tell whether or not your current drinking habits were most likely going to affect your health, or if you were okay, should you back off. Me being someone who does not drink at all, I kind of had to make up my own scenarios to see what advice the website gave, and it ended up being quite interesting. So let's talk about ways to get help. Sites like alcoholscreening.org, of course, perform online screening into individuals' drinking habits. The survey evaluates whether the drinking habits are affecting health. Other resources include treatment centers, alcohol abuse helplines, Alcohol Anonymous meetings, and also local churches or law enforcement agencies usually have some kind of literature. I know one school in particular here in Oklahoma City, actually in Bethany, Oklahoma, Southern Nazarene University, they actually hold alcohol counseling on campus to help those who need help. But certainly other local churches, I know the Catholic Church helps with that. Also, the LDS Church offers counseling for substance abuse. So tips for parents. Essentially, you need to communicate with your children, stay in their lives, stay involved, listen to them when they are talking, know your children's friends and parents. I know growing up, I didn't ever get to go to a friend's house unless my parents knew the friend that I was going to, knew their parents. It's about safety. Set guidelines and expectations to alcohol use for your children. I think if you don't set boundaries or expectations, obviously I think you're sending a message of it's not that big of a deal, which obviously with the statistics that I've shown today, it is a very big deal. Also, be interested and involved with your children. This goes back to communication. When they speak, listen. Don't just, give your one-word answers. Listen to what they have to say. Tips for teens include choose your friends wisely. Definitely helps. Ask your parents for advice. That's what they're there for. Stay involved in school activities like sports clubs, etc. And say no to peer pressure, and essentially don't put yourself in a bad situation. If you put yourself in a bad situation, bad things happen. So in conclusion, alcohol is its own form of drug. I think that's pretty alcohol is responsible for 1 in 10 deaths in ages 20 to 64, which is quite alarming. Alcohol shortens the lives by 30 years in those who abuse it. Alcohol contributes to way too much violence and other criminal acts, as we've shown today. And finally, help can be found, whether it's a treatment center, a church, a helpline. There is no excuse for not looking for help. And our references that were used, of course, and that is about